like to welcome an old friend, Jochen Weil. He's going to take us back a few years. He's going to talk to us about Leonardo da Vinci and the heart. Jochen.
Yes. Good morning. At first of all, I would thank Horst Sievert for this kind invitation. It's a great pleasure for me. Now, Leonardo in his work. Now, if you open an atlas, now you see such brilliant illustration. However, it's not well known that the work of Leonardo influenced so much this type of illustration. Now, the structure of my presentation is to tell you about the life and the environment of Leonardo da Vinci, then to come to his anatomical work presented by using dialectic examples, and then revolution of illustration. This is a self-portrait of Leonardo at the age of 60 years. Now, he was born in 1452 in Tuscany as an illegitimate son of a solicitor and a maid. He had no academic education. He did not learn Greek and Latin. And at the age of 17 years, he started his formation as an artist in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio. He lived and worked mainly in Florence, Milan, and Rome. He was admired for his physical beauty and strength. He loved men and social life. He was a talented singer, entertainer, and organizer of festivals. But most of all, he was the universal genius with extraordinary abilities as an artist, engineer, and scientist. After an invitation by the French king, he settled in France in 1517. And 2 years later, he died at the age of 65, allegedly in the arms of the French king, as shown in this painting. Important, the period he lived, it was a Renaissance, and there was a turning of the mind from the beyond to the exploration of the here and now. It was an interesting period with important events like conquest of Constantinople by the Turks, invention of printing, or discovery of America. The hallmark was a rediscovery of philosophy, architecture, and art of ancient Greece. And centers in Italy were Florence, Milan, and Rome, and famous contemporaries of Leonardo were Michelangelo, Botticelli, and Tizian. Now, in this period, many new ideas occurred, except from the field of medicine. There still ruled the doctrine of Galen, with many wrong assumptions, such as arterial and venous systems are separate. Blood is formed in the liver and disappears in the periphery. Blood enters from the right ventricle through the pores of the interventricular septum into the left ventricle. Now the question is why this rigidity survived, and very likely due to the mode of teaching of anatomy in the Middle Ages. Like shown in this painting, the professor was sitting above the post-mortem section, and he did not see the post-mortem section. A surgeon performed the section, and he had to show all that what the professor wanted to be seen according to the doctrine of Galen. Now, this was a time when Leonardo started his work at the age of 35 years. In contrary, he did all the postmortems by himself. He performed 30 postmortem sections on humans carried out in Florence, Milan, and Rome. And he planned to publish an anatomy book, but this was not realized as so many other projects by him he had in mind. From his work, about 150 folios with 800 drawings and annotations have survived. They were lost for some time, but eventually by chance were found in a granary of Windsor Castle in the 18th century and were not published until 1916. Now, to appreciate what Leonardo did, just to have a look at one example of an illustration at that time from a very famous book, and you see the drawing is just very rough and schematic of the organs because the author has never done an autopsy. Now, if you look at a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, you see the great difference. With his pen and ink drawings, he reached a great plasticity, but even better than on a photography. If you look at this drawing, there are some mistakes, because he took over from Galen. The heart has only 2 chambers, the liver is the central organ, and there are vascular connections between liver and spleen. Now, when he did his examinations, he noticed more and more a discrepancy between his own findings and the doctrine by Galen. So he started more and more his own studies, but this was difficult. To perform postmortems were a challenge, and he said to carry out this research, one needed patience, endurance, good drawing skill, and first of all, courage. And he said, although this fascinates you, perhaps fear prevents you from spending the night hours in the company of these 4-parted and horrible-looking cadavers. Just to remind you, post-mortem were allowed only in persons who were executed, and 4-parting people was a popular mode of execution. Now I show you 2 examples of his own examination. What he found is new. The heart consists not only of 2 ventricles, but has 2 atria which contract. And the heart has valves that allow blood to flow only in one direction. In this drawing, you see pores, and this, he took over from Galen these pores. This is a folio, and you see the drawing, but there are many, many thoughts and reflections written down. For instance, he found the heart is the pump, a new finding, and he wrote, the heart is a vessel made of thick muscles, animated and nourished by artery and vein. And the heart moves by its own power, and if it stops forever. This was not known at that time. Another finding was the description of the moderator band. And here you see this nice drawing from the tricuspid valve and the moderator band. And what was important for him is form and function. Rightly, the moderator band prevents dilatation of the right ventricle. Furthermore, he performed physiological studies in animals, like here in the pigs. And here he studied the movement of the heart presented by the movement of a spit. So he put in the spit into the moving heart. And what he found was new as well. Ventricular contraction is simultaneous with the peripheral pulse. And he wrote, there's a blood wave caused by the heartbeat that goes through all the vessels. Their pulse shows us this when we touch the mentioned vessels with our finger. Another example, the study of flow. He worked as well as a hydraulic engineer in Milan, and during this time he studied the flow in rivers, water reservoirs, and aqueducts. And these studies stimulated him to investigate as well the blood flow in the aortic root. And he nicely left ventricular outflow tract, and the blood is flowing into the ascending aorta in the bulbus of aorta. Furthermore, he performed models. For instance, a glass model of the aortic root filled with pulsating water. In that, he added millet seeds to study flow profile. Or he found a relationship between flow rate and cross-section. The narrower the pipe, the faster the flow. So with any doubts, he did many, many contributions to anatomy. But maybe of even greater importance is his revolution in scientific illustration. For him, the drawing is the most important tool. And he said, the drawing is the best method of explaining complex relationships in anatomy in a comprehensive way. And the drawing should not only provide the external form or reflect, but provide true knowledge and understanding. And he wrote, and you who say it's better to watch an anatomical demonstration than to look at these drawings, you would be right if it were possible to see all things on a single form. I give you some examples, elements of illustration. Here nicely, he took the pieces apart and then he showed how they function together, and he did the magnification. Or another element is to show the object from different angles of view, like this foot. Other element of illustration is with reduction to the essential to show the relation between form and function, like muscles on this shoulder. Or transparency, removal of obscuring structures to concentrate the attention of the essential. And he wrote, you gain a better knowledge of the whole when you have lifted off one part. Then you can see the true form of the whole. Drawings are important, but sometimes you need as well words. And here you see the first description of the aortic arch in a 100-year-old man. And what he could not draw was this finding. In the very old people, the wall of the blood vessel is very thick, and this makes the blood flow more and more restricted. Now, this revolution of illustration has influenced the illustrations up to now. Here you see two drawings of the lumbar region. On the left-hand side, the drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, and in an atlas edited 400 years later, and you see the great similarities between the two drawings, and you can decide which drawing suits you better. To come to end. Now, working with dead people, let him think also of death. And here in this folio, you see a skull as a memento mori, like remember the death. And he wrote, all the while I believed I was learning to live, I was learning to die. The last folio, Vasari, the famous biographer in the Renaissance, wrote about Leonardo. Sometimes we see in a single person beauty, talent, and high ability united in almost supernatural abundance that in every field he far surpasses all others. Thus, Leonardo da Vinci was not only gifted by physical beauty, but he was also distinguished by incomparable talent in everything he did. Thank you very much.
Jochen, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.